Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to the second half of our first day of our Teaching and Learning Conference. As a reminder, my name is Gavin Watson, and it's a pleasure to be with you this afternoon. This is our student panel, and I'll introduce our guests in a moment. But I just want to talk a little bit about the panel and what's going to happen. It's, I guess, technically a fireside chat. I was expecting a fire, but I wasn't expecting this fire. I'm more interested actually to know if someone's going to come and stoke the fire halfway through our conversation. I've already seen birds fly through, so I know that at least if I don't capture your attention, you'll be able to watch the video and be excited about that. The format of our fireside chat is that I'll be asking some questions of our panelists, so I'd just like to introduce Kely, Scott, and Jhana, who will introduce themselves in a moment. We'll have a conversation, and then after our chat, we'll be turning the floor over to our discussants, Dr. Amy Surprenant and Dr. Donna Hardy-Cox, who will share a little bit of what they heard as far as the conversation was concerned and ask us to consider what it means for our own work. So that's the plan. Let's see how it goes, shall we? All right, so I'll just turn to my left, your right, and maybe ask, Kely, can you start by introducing yourself?
Sure. So my name's Kely Greenfield. I'm a PhD student here at Memorial in sociology. I focus on international development, and I've come from the University of Windsor, where I did my undergrad and my master's degree.
And I'm Scott Taylor. I'm sick right now, so sorry if I'm a bit hard to understand at times. But I'm a Master's of Applied Psychological Science student right now. Near the end of my degree, I only have one semester left, so woohoo.
Yes.
And before that, I did my Bachelor of Science honors in psychology as well.
And
Here.
all of these waters are for Scott, because he's feeling
I'm going to need them.
Yeah.
And I'm Jhana. I'm an international student, actually, and I'm in the business faculty. And I'm from Mauritius, and I live next to Madagascar, if you didn't know that. And
Anybody visited Mauritius? Yeah. No? Okay.
Nope.
No. So on some people's bucket list. Well, it's great to have the three of you here, and thanks so much for joining us. We're going to start the conversation by asking a really broad question, and Kely, I'll start with you. And that question is, can you describe the best learning experience that you had at Memorial, what it was?
That's a good question. I mean, I've had so many. I will say one of my first a learning experience that impressed on me really greatly was probably during my coursework. So a few years ago, and we were discussing a sociological concept. And the group of us were together along with the professor, and we had this great, amazing discussion. But then we used to go to Bitters every Friday as a group. So the sociology department, not everybody, but there's always several of us there. And we went to Bitters one day to have, just our coffee or wine or whatnot on a Friday. And we started discussing this concept. Our conversation from the class overflowed into our social space. And we ended up having this discussion that was furthered from the one in the class, but there was other faculty members there and other students that weren't in the class as well. And the discussion was absolutely amazing. There was a whole group of students, all of us with our jaw on the floor, because all the faculty were kind of debating these concepts, and it was such an amazing learning experience for us, not just for the, learning about the concepts and learning about, more about sociology, but also just seeing sort of how you interact and connect with the students and the staff and the faculty all together, and the different ideas that can pop out in, the different situations. And in this case, it was kind of like a classroom outside of the classroom.
Yeah, I was going to say, it sounds like the context matters, the fact that it was in a pub.
Yeah, it did. It was different. It was a different feeling. It was a different situation, a different experience. So, I mean, we had our class experience, and then we had outside the class experience.
Yeah.
And with, the faculty and the students kind of engaging in a respectful and safe sort of place, we just got a lot more out of it. So that was a pretty mind-blowing experience.
Great. Interesting to hear. Scott, can you tell us a little bit about yours?
Yeah, sure. So I guess part of my program, my Masters of Applied Psychological Science program, MAPS program, which it surprises people that it's not a geography program, but it's part of it is to do work terms. So I've had 2 work terms now, just finished my second one with the Office of Public Engagement. And I guess kind of all of my work terms and all of my practical application of my learning has been kind of overall the greatest highlight for me. So I guess kind of going back in time a little bit, throughout all of my undergraduate degree, I was kind of a very solitary learner. I would just kind of show up to class and, get the work done and go home. And, even when there were kind of social things within the classroom, I'd kind of be on the shyer end of things, I guess. Yeah, and it's kind of interesting because probably 3 or 4 years ago, doing something like this would have been fundamentally impossible for me. Yeah, I guess it was kind of a solitary, almost like a selfish way of learning. I think it was all for personal gain and for trying to advance myself and kind of thing. But when it came to actually applying my knowledge in these work term settings and the more practical elements and communicating with people, and I guess basically distilling the things that I learned in theory to a more to something that can actually help someone, or I guess put it in a way that they can actually get something out of it. I found that very meaningful, and it was kind of that was kind of the highlight for me, and it kind of made me think of that kind of learning as kind of learning for others rather than learning for myself. So, yeah, I think that was kind of the highlight.
Great, thanks for that. And so if I understand you correctly, the meaningfulness of it was the fact that you were translating what you learned and had to share it with others. Is that what changed your perspective?
Yeah, I think so. It was the translation and the application of it, but also what you get back in return, I think. So I was able to kind of take what I had learned in a textbook, and I knew everything from the textbook, but I would be able to apply it and then get more back from people than what I would ever learn in a textbook. So I think, yeah, that it kind of provided a platform for some kind of deeper learning than would be possible in other circumstances.
Great, thanks. And do you have thoughts on what your best learning experience has been?
Yeah, sure. When I first came here, actually from Mauritius, I was studying political science, and I was not really sure about what I want to do, and I actually did not have many friends here either. So I joined the ISC, the International Students Resources Center, as a volunteer, and I was actually responsible for the marketing of an event that was the multicultural show, and there I made meaningful connections with people, and also this kind of pushed me to learn about new skills that I didn't even think I would learn about. I actually my friends actually helped me a lot to learn about Adobe and stuff like that, to create new skills for myself. And I also I remember going to meetings and talk to people and engage into meaningful conversations and give advice as to how to make the event a success. And at the end of the semester, I really felt like I contributed positively to the success of not only the event, but also to the whole process of how we all kind of communicated with each other, and yeah, so that was about it.
That's great. So it sounds in some regards that through the opportunity to organize this event, that there was learning that was happening?
Yeah, it was the learning, the experience, but also getting out of your comfort zone as an international student, because it's really difficult for us to make friends and connect with people when you come from abroad. So that was a really good learning experience for me to learn about the culture, plus learn about how to act in a professional way. And, yeah.
But also hand in hand was you've identified stepping out of your comfort zone, being forced out of your comfort zone. So one thing that I have to notice on all the stories that you shared about your rich learning experience was that they technically happened outside a classroom. which is an interesting thing. So can you talk a little bit about the relationship between what you learned in the classroom and how you applied it outside? Like, is there a relationship between the two, or should we just all go home and like give you guys spaces to have conversations and stuff like that?
Well, I mean, for me, the learning that I did in the classroom was obviously, very influential and an important part of my learning process. I think the difference is that for me, once I stepped outside of that classroom, so I did my field research in Cambodia. And when I went to Cambodia, I realized that everything that I learned in the classroom was actually coming out in practice. So what I learned in theory was actually happening in practice. And that realization that I had was pretty profound. When I thought about all the money I spent on the education, it actually paid out. So I think that connection, seeing it actually happening in real life, I think was a really important point for me to realize that, that it was worth it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that obviously both parts are very necessary inside the classroom. I mean, that's the only way that you would actually be able to go outside of the classroom and be able to really contribute something, I think, is if you had previously learned something inside the classroom that you could take with you. And I'm not sure if maybe the most meaningful part being outside of the classroom is just because it was kind of novel to me, you know, where I had kind of 5 years of schooling that was inside the classroom, and a lot of it is kind of similarly structured. You have your set goals, and it's kind of almost hard to look back and say, oh yeah, I did this particular project in this course. It kind of almost blends together, especially when you're doing so many courses in the same subject area. So yeah, maybe it's that novelty part of it, or maybe the salience of it where I just came off a work term, maybe that was why it's so nice. But yeah, I think the parts inside the classroom are still obviously very important and very much so a highlight as well looking back, but I guess just less kind of prominent.
If we asked you when we're asking you to distill it down into one moment, it was that outside the classroom.
Yeah.
But in relationship with one another. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I also think that learning inside the classroom and outside the classroom are important.
Yeah.
But also I think of it as learning inside the classroom is an input of knowledge, and we go through the processing part of it, and then the output should always be experiencing whatever you learned inside the classroom, outside, just one of the reasons why I came here from Mauritius is I did not really like to concentrate a lot on the academic part of it, because back home it's really competitive, and the students, my friends even, they're always learning and studying really hard for exams, for example. But I really think that teaching, inside the classroom should be not really memorizing things, and mostly applying the concepts to the outside world. That's what would really help us in the future.
Right. Yeah. So there's I think there was the mention of the real world in scare quotes, and I think this is one of the things that we always are challenged in higher ed, is to consider how the classroom is the real world. That that perhaps it's a bit of a false dichotomy between what's happening outside of classroom walls and what's happening inside of classroom walls. And it's just hearing your experiences. It's important for us as educators to think about how we can bring those two together. One of the things that I did hear you say, though, around that best learning experience was that they were, and I'm going to put words in your mouth, so please feel free to correct me, was that they were social in some regards. So it was meeting like minds in a pub and having a meaningful conversation. It was taking that, you talked about the sort of trajectory of your undergrad to grad, where it was a solo, more focused on personal achievement, and then that's changed a little bit as you've gone into your master's program. And then, Jhana, it was about the idea that you were looking to connect with others and engage with others. And so I do find it interesting that that's a commonality between all of your three most engaging or best learning experiences, that engagement with others. Can you reflect on that anymore? Can you talk about that, that social bit? Because I guess the one thing that we often hear is, group work, eyes roll, right? So if we start engaging students in these sort of meaningful learning experiences and expect them to work together, we often get pushback. But I'm just noting that in these cases, your richest learning experiences definitely do involve others.
Well, I'm a sociologist, so
Okay.
yeah, as far as I'm concerned, we're all social beings, and at the base of it, that's, we're all social, so I think that's a huge part of it. But in my particular case, I got to say, the learning that I did outside the classroom, it solidified, what I did learn in the classroom. But then when we got out and we're in a social setting, the multiplicity of voices came out. I got a diversity of opinions and of different theories and backgrounds and intentions towards those theories, and just the group dynamic in that social setting made it a very, very different experience. It felt more exciting. It felt like it was, just sort of happening very naturally, very organically in front of us. So I thought that was particularly insightful for me to, in a mentorship role, I was able to see this is how you act and behave and perform, when you're in a different seat. But just the multiplicity of voices and different opinions that I got, I found I couldn't get that in the classroom with the one voice.
Right.
But I could in a social setting where there was many. So that was the highlight for me.
Sometimes talking over each other,
Yeah.
depending on how loud the bar got.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, I guess in the classroom, to some extent, you're all kind of there to learn the same thing.
Right.
So there's, I guess, depending on what angle you look at it, there might be some kind of limit to the amount of insight that another person could provide on something that you're trying to learn. As opposed to at the outside world, everybody has had completely different experiences, and they're not kind of in whatever you're doing for the same reason that you are, I guess. So they would have, I guess, different angles to look at things, which, I guess kind of is part of the richness that you were talking about, the diversity of voices. So in terms of, I guess, breaking that dichotomy, like you were saying, it's kind of hard to actually bring that kind of diverse range of perspectives into the classroom, I think.
Right.
But it'd be interesting to see if that's possible in any way. I see guest speakers as some way to do that.
Sure.
But maybe using technology in some way would be interesting.
An interesting suggestion.
Mm.
I agree with both of them, and they probably explain whatever I wanted to in a better way. And I also think that in the classroom, whatever we learn, it's often 5 + 5 = 10. But when we experience the world, outside of the classroom, it's 5 + 5 might be equal to 12. Because of the experiences and everything is different. You get to learn about how things happen in the real life instead of how things happen in theory.
Right.
Everything is kind of different, but the base might be similar, but the experiences are really different and realistic.
Sure. The shades of gray that you discover outside the
struggles, the good things, the bad things, everything is pretty much
Interesting. You were talking about novelty and the idea of excitement. These are words that I heard when you talked about your best learning experience. And that's a tall order to always be providing novel, exciting learning experiences. So I think it's interesting to hear about what your best learning experiences were like. But I don't think the aim is sharing these characteristics to argue that every single learning experience has to be sort of like a peak learning experience. It's just like you're moving from exciting moment to exciting moment. Because I think I would argue that there's probably some value in struggling through some material. But if we can return back to those characteristics or those hallmarks of what your best learning experiences were like, have you seen them other places, or do you have advice to instructors or staff as they're considering how to design learning experiences or how to facilitate things in order to kind of facilitate the same kind of things that happened to you, where you had that sort of moment where you went, this is great?
Geez, I don't know. I think thinking outside the box is often a lot harder to do than to say, but thinking outside the box, trying to shake things up a bit. So when I was learning about ethnography and fieldwork, so the assignment in our class was go on a bus and observe, or go in a restaurant or a coffee shop and observe. So even that learning that I did in the classroom that sent me out into the, I guess, real world was an exciting form for me to learn outside of the classroom that started with the work that I learned inside the classroom.
Right.
So I mean, I think that was a good example, kind of just making it my learning, compounding it with the in the classroom, out of the classroom, and then report back to the class what you learned from outside the class. So I think that was, I know it would be hard, a lot of pressure on faculty and to always have novel learning, exciting learning experiences, but I do think that there is a way. In my case, it was what I learned in the classroom, I then took outside the classroom.
Right, and in the moment though, right? You weren't waiting. You didn't have to wait 6 months, a year. There was in that moment, maybe in the span of a week or 2 weeks, that opportunity to get out and apply.
Right.
Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think maybe, I guess just like kind of investigating whether there's actually some potential to just, I guess, not even shoehorn, but just add an option to maybe some kind of project that is part of a requirement for a course. Maybe just add some kind of option for the students to do that outside of the classroom. So I'm thinking back right now to a entomology course that I did with Dr. Tom Chapman.
That's the study of insects for those of you who...
Yeah. So it was a great course, right? I mean, get down and dirty with bugs.
Is that the name of the course? That would be a great name. Somebody take note.
Yeah.
That's ground-dwelling beetles, by the way. Donna.
That's right, yeah. That's just the start of it.
Yeah.
But so part of this course was this major project in which you could either make a collection of insects that you go out and hunt yourself and do that kind of thing, or you could do a service learning project where you take something about insects and teach it to someone. So in most cases, people ended up like doing a project about bees and how bees are so helpful to the whole ecosystem around us, and taking that to like a primary school and teaching kids that. So that was something that I think a couple of the groups did for their service learning project.
Right.
Now, me, myself, I mean, who wouldn't want to get the chance to relive being a 6-year-old and going to catch grasshoppers? So I chose that route, but I heard that the service learning project was very rewarding. So I think,
Go ahead. An interesting example of student choice, though, right? As a learner, you got to choose what assessment or what it was that you were going to do in order to demonstrate that you achieved the learning outcomes of the course.
Yeah, and I think it wasn't to any great, I guess, trial or tribulation on Dr. Chapman's part to offer us that kind of way to do the project. I think it was mostly find something that you're able to present on, or some kind of project you're able to do, and then almost make it happen yourself. Right. So I think that there might be some kind of option, at least, to start with, to kind of get students engaged a little bit, or if they're so inclined.
Right. Thanks. Jhana, do you have thoughts?
Yeah, this conversation actually reminded me of like my marketing class.
Yeah.
So I think that it's not like really, like we don't really have to like have an experience outside of the classroom to like experience this great feeling that, okay, I'm actually applying the knowledge that I got. Because I remember in my marketing class, we actually like created a venture and like tried to pitch the idea to the students in our class, right? So that was like a really exciting moment where like the professor came with like the members of the faculty came with like this idea to like help us apply this knowledge. But also I think that what I really, really believe in is that not that we should stop like learning by heart, and like we should probably like start maybe applying the knowledge that we get from everywhere, maybe from the internet or like from books, and really apply them in the real life. It's like,
So when
basically,
you say learning by heart, you mean memorization?
yes, memorization.
You wanna
I
move
really,
beyond
yes,
that.
I want to move beyond that, and
Yeah.
I think that these types of knowledge are like, you know, available everywhere on the internet, and like exams, for example. I do not really believe that this is like a real way of testing knowledge, you know? Like testing knowledge for me would be like, how do you apply this to like a real life situation?
Right.
That would, yeah.
So in an ideal world, you would demonstrate that you understand the concepts through the application or the synthesis or the creation of something,
Yep.
rather than simply completing a multiple choice test,
Yes.
for example.
Yes, definitely.
Interesting.
That's how I-
What's interesting for me in the three things that I heard you talk about was that a lot of the characteristics you described were actually assessments or ways that you were evaluated. There were novel assessments and ways that you were evaluated so like work that you had to go out and then bring that back to the class, that you got to choose between community engaged or a service learning project or collecting an insect collection, or this notion that you were being asked to pitch a venture, which is something that you would be doing when you left university in your capacity as a marketer. These are all interesting characteristics that I think are worth us considering as we're designing courses around assessment and how we can think about the kinds of assessments we ask students to do and consider them to be a really rich space for learning. Often we think of assessments as being the summative evaluation. That's where students demonstrate, but we also know that students can learn a lot through completing some really meaningful and well-designed assessments. All right, has anybody come to stoke the fire yet? Oh, it's roaring. Has anybody come? The conversation's been so engrossing that I have not been watching the video. We're gonna move now on to our second question, talking a little bit about learning experiences. One of the big questions that comes out of the teaching and learning framework is this notion of student success. And so that's something that I'd like to explore with the three of you a little bit more. I think we've alluded to this at the beginning, earlier in the day, where we suggested, or at least Brian suggested, that success may look different for different students. But often when we talk about an institution, success can be things like graduating. So I guess that's really my question to you. And that question is, what does success here at Memorial look like for you?
For me, it's like how I said like before, it's like applying whatever I learn in like a real life situation and like actually getting to share knowledge and information with like other people, not only like the students in my class, but like people from the faculty, like, or people in general, like outside of MUN maybe. Like, this is what success would mean for me, to like being able to get this like, you know, contribution of like, to be able to like contribute to like a meaningful cause and like to being able to like share knowledge with each other.
Okay, that's great.
That's
I guess success. Well, I came out of high school, kind of having good marks in all subject areas, kind of thing. So I didn't really have a specific direction when I came to university. I ended up picking engineering, and I'm a psychology student now, so that didn't go.
So how'd that go?
Yeah, yeah. So that, you know, I kind of felt like I didn't really have any specific path that I knew that I wanted to take. So it's kind of weird to think about having good grades and everything as some kind of challenge. You know, oh, it's horrible, right? But no, I think it was actually it was a challenge to just have an identity, I guess, as a student and figure out what it was that I actually liked as opposed to what I was actually good at.
Right.
So I think that there was some challenge in, I guess, kind of dipping my toes in the water and finding what it was that I did like. But I think that success as a student kind of came from not just the achievements and getting the marks and being good at what you're doing, because that can come whether you're actually interested in the field or whether you're just good at learning in a classroom.
Right.
So I think the actual success came when that kind of passion came out for what I really wanted to do, and I was kind of driven by something some kind of compulsion, I guess, to learn more about my specific area, as opposed to just taking this course and getting a good mark and moving on to the next course and kind of racking up all these different, high letter grades kind of thing. So, yeah.
What you're describing, it resonates with me, and this isn't about me. So what I'm interested in knowing a little bit more, though, is like, can you tell me when that sort of shifted in you, that you found meaning, or like you found what it was where you found that passion?
Yeah.
Do you know, or was it just like it's only in hindsight that you can see that?
Yeah, I guess it was a very gradual thing.
Yeah.
It wasn't any specific moment. It probably started when I had to actually do my honors project in my psychology program.
Right.
So I ended up doing that on puffins. So I took the animal behavior route of psychology, and I was studying puffins out on Gull Island with Dr. Ann Story. So that was a great experience, but I kind of learned that I wanted to work with humans, not with birds that were going to bite my thumb off.
Yeah.
So, so I think that might have been something of a realization, but I think there were other realizations along the way that, this was kind of my field, and I wanted to, I kind of liked the scientific rigor of psychology and how it could be applied to everyday kind of aspects, and yeah.
Great. Thoughts, Kely?
Well, I kind of alluded to it earlier, but when I was in Cambodia, I had read and been lectured on, observing and participating and interviewing, and then I was in Cambodia and I was doing it. And that was a huge success for me when I realized that, wow, that I'm actually doing what I've spent all these years learning to do, and doing it well because I was trained well.
Yeah.
So that to me was a very successful moment. Maybe even more successful was, so I was looking at the Millennium Development Goals of the United Nations, most specifically looking at ending poverty and hunger. And when I realized after a year when I was leaving my field site that the research that I just did was going to help, that was a huge success.
Sure.
Yeah, that was really, it was successful personally, academically, spiritually. That was the epitome of success to me.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, the three of you represent, in essence, like 3 stages and I'm not suggesting there's only 3 stages, but 3 stages in the development of sort of an academic worldview. Kely, it's interesting to me that your success story is one that came through your PhD work. Does that mean that you didn't feel successful beforehand, or is it that there are successes that students can achieve throughout their, because not everybody will end up completing a master's or a PhD. Can we expect students to have success or identify their own success without studying for a doctoral degree?
Absolutely. Look, the question was, what was your biggest success?
Yeah.
I mean, if you asked me how many successes I had, we'd be here for probably a few weeks.
Oh, go on. Yeah, okay.
But no, I think, let's celebrate our successes every day, you know? Finishing a class, finishing, a course, finishing a degree, it's all a success. But even just, that aha moment that you have that I had when I learned about all this theory and I read about all this theory, and then the aha moment that I had when I was there saying, wow, this is my learning in action.
Right. So if you can reflect then back on those, perhaps all of you, on the different successes that you've had as a student, describing what that looks like, can you identify what's contributed to those successes or the success that you described? What are the factors, people, experiences?
I've had a lot of support.
Yeah.
Not just family and institutional support, but friends and colleagues and faculty members and staff that have been very, very supportive of all the successes and support of anything that I do in order to make me successful. So I've had all kinds of support.
To make you successful.
Yeah.
There's a different action orientation to that statement, as in they were active in their support of you to be successful. Is that a fair characterization?
That's fair. Yep, absolutely.
And you experienced it here.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the support that I've had, just in terms of a grant that I received that got me to go to Cambodia in the first place. Support from faculty members that have, pushed me to think outside the box, to get a little further, to, provide me with an opportunity to succeed.
And there was that pushing.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I've had some push. I've had some self-pushing that I've had to do.
Sure.
But so I have supported myself. I will give myself that credit. I have given myself some support as well. But without the support of everybody that's been so supportive in my academic career, it would be hard for me to be here without that support.
Great.
Yeah. I mean, I've had quite a few kind of external forms of support as well. Various people, I guess, throughout my degree who were around at the right time to kind of give me a nudge to, keep on going and finish the thesis or get that project done or something like that.
Inside the university, outside the university?
Inside the university,
okay,
yeah,
inside,
like specific professors and things like that. But I guess like I already mentioned, we're such of a great proportion of my early learning was kind of self-driven and kind of selfish, as I said. I guess there was some kind of support that I got from within myself a little bit. I'm not really sure exactly what that was, or if it was maybe just, just the desire to succeed or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But there was some times when I had to say, like, yeah, just keep doing what you're doing. Eventually you'll get somewhere with it. Sometimes it's monotonous, just completing course after course after course.
Right.
And not feeling like you're really going anywhere. But and I mean, obviously, probably my biggest form of support has been my family. I've born and raised here in Mount Pearl, and I was able to come to Memorial University because of my parents, and allowing me to live at home and being able to come here, very privileged kind of thing, right? So, yeah, I guess it hasn't been especially hard for me to come to university and learn. So I think that's a very, probably a novel thing.
But important to understand that everybody has different levels of support at home. You were lucky in having a lot of support, and that meant different things for you, that you're able to focus on your studies as an undergraduate student, for example.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I would say support as well, but it's not like really the main factor for me because, my family is like back home, and when I'm like suffering from something, for example, I wouldn't like always call them and say, hey, I'm going through like this bad phase right now and I need you, because they would be worried about me. I think the thing that like kept me going was the fact that I would get back what I put in. It's like the effort that I make towards like something is going to be rewarding at the end. So that's what kept me
Knowledge
going.
that you'll reap some kind of reward.
Yes, like if I like make an effort towards something, I'm gonna get it back. Yeah.
Great, thanks. So I want to thank our panelists for their contributions. And now we're going to make the switch and invite our discussants to come up. And so here I am. I will let, who would like to go first? Donna's got her notes ready to go. Amy's ready to go. You want to share what you've heard?
I'm happy to start.
Okay. It's working.
It's working?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you so much for all of your perspectives. Those were really well put. I really enjoyed it. And thanks, Gavan, for doing a lot of the summarization. We've already talked
Sorry,
a lot
I've stolen
about
your thunder, have I?
learning outside the classroom, self-directed learning. As a grad dean, of course, that's what all of graduate programs are about, is finding your own path. It's a very personal journey, more so than undergrad. But I did want to just pick up on one thing and talk a little bit about something that was missing from some of the stories. And it's not that that they deliberately left this out, but something I think that as educators we don't talk enough about is failure and the learning that we can get with failure. And Scott mentioned it a little bit, is that he learned a lot about puffins, and he learned that he doesn't actually like them very much. They're very cute, but they're not very nice. So some of the things that we try, we're actually going to fail at. And that is a really important learning opportunity. And the reason that I brought this up is because the thing that I find is the biggest barrier for graduate students is that first failure. And many times they've been successful in everything that they've tried, everything that they've done. They've always been the smartest person in the room. And then they come to grad school and all of a sudden, there's something they're going to fail at, or there's some barrier that they're not going to be able to get over. And they don't actually, I'm not sure we teach them how to get over those barriers and how to think through. Actually, sometimes, I know it's not very popular to say, sometimes you do have to give up on a pathway, to say this is not productive, I have to start something new. And trying to find when that path is something I think that we need to do a better job of.
It's also interesting that I'm not sure, sorry Donna, that we actually engineer the opportunities for people to fail gracefully.
Gracefully,
Yeah.
Without any consequences.
Yeah, flaming out.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. I want to also say that I'm very impressed by the student panel and impressed by the contributions that students make here at the university. I think you've all given us lots of food for thought in terms of how students can take an active role in their own learning experiences. And I think you've given some really terrific examples of how you've taken things on, and when you've been given an assignment, you've taken on your creative pieces to get on buses and to explore different things that you've explored. It's one of the things that, I guess there's three themes that sort of are familiar to me, but I certainly heard them here, as around the importance of feeling welcomed in your classrooms. I heard you talk about how important it is to feel that the classroom is a place where you feel welcomed and comfortable. Security is certainly a part of that, and some of you have actually said the word secure and safe, and safe in the sense that you can explore the different ideas. And I think the pub example was such a beautiful example of that, of where you can have those kinds of in-class and out-of-class learning experiences, but feeling welcomed and safe, and that you can add your perspective to a conversation, even if it is a group of faculty members debating different theoretical orientations towards a concept. There's tremendous learning that comes from that. The other thing I heard you say was around becoming engaged and involved in either in your classes or in the community at large, and how that was felt very rewarding. And that's certainly supported in the literature, that the more that students become engaged and get to know their professors, particularly in the first year, it really, there's research out there that supports how impactful that is, and a major determinant in terms of people's success in their first year. So for the faculty and professors and teaching staff, it's really important. You may not even realize the impact you're having on a student, and I heard that importance of connection. I just want to go back to the failure piece, and I think that's sometimes that's seen as such a negative, but for some students, we really need to help them navigate when they find, as I think Scott talked about, came in and did these courses and planned on doing a particular program, and we need to find ways to facilitate that so it's not seen as success or failure. It's just how you do university, and we need to sort of roll that into our practice, and we're not quite there yet.
No. Thank you, Dr. Surprenant and Dr. Hardy-Cox, for your reflections and
Can I just add one
synthesis.
thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
So one of the questions was about success and how you've been a success or what your greatest successes are. I don't think we're ever finished being a success or being, we're never a finished product. And every day I kind of wake up and try and decide what I want to be when I grow up. And so I think it's sort of a bit artificial to say, you know, I'm a success now, I'm done, because it never actually happened. So if we can instill that in our students too, that there are success points, there are going to be points where, yeah, I think I might be done with this, but it's an ongoing, lifelong kind of success after success. Yeah.
This notion that we continue to grow, and that we can grow as learners, as humans, infusing that into the work that we do will build our success.
Thank you.
Okay. So thanks to both of you. Thanks for your engagement and your rapt attention. And thanks to our panelists as well.